Yeah. Feel important now. Yep, you're looking for it, so you're doing all right.
All right, well, it's 7 p.m. I'm always a stickler for staying on time, so welcome to our joint town hall meeting for the Roselle Public Library District and the Village of Roselle. I'm Mayor David Pileski, and I guess we were feeling some FOMO for not having town hall meetings after having so many this spring that we felt like we need to have another town hall meeting. Obviously, tonight we're here to discuss the referendum that the Public Library District is moving forward with, as well as the details of our intergovernmental agreement. And so we'll go through a lot of that information here tonight, and at the end, we'll take all of your questions, but we want to go through all of our presentation first. This is also being streamed and is recorded, so we encourage anyone who is missing neighbors or friends, encourage them to watch it so they can become educated. And the biggest thing I'll stress is we're not here to advocate for you to vote yes or no. We're simply here to educate and give you the facts and answer your questions. We're not here to take a position. So keep that in mind as we go through all the information here tonight. So if we go to our first slide. What we're going to do is we're going to go through some history of the property in question, which is 233 East Maple Avenue. And then we're going to discuss the highlights of the land swap deal. Then we're going to turn it over to our fantastic public library district to talk through their referendum and building plan. And then we're going to close out with the future plans for Village Center, and we'll open up for your Q&A. We will ask that when you do ask a question, we want it on a microphone because we know we can hear you here, but those at home can't, and they might have that same question. So we want to make sure that they can hear it. And we may repeat that question up here too, just to make sure everyone can understand and hear it. With me tonight is Village Administrator Jason Blowski. And we also have a few of our trustees in the audience, Trustee Lee Trejo, Trustee Wayne Domke, Trustee Della Penna, Trustee Perkowski, and I think Trustee Lenise is still on vacation, but we'll say her name anyway, just in case, and Trustee Dina Forsyth as well. And then we also have from the Public Library District, President Katie Smith, Executive Director Sam Johnson now, right? No, I got the right last name. Yes, I know, but it's hard sometimes. And then we have Terrell Barnes with the Library District and Sue Harold with the Library District, and anyone? And Mike Harrington, thank you. Thank you so much. So we got introductions out of the way, so you got the players. Also after Q&A, feel free to stick around if you have a question. Approach any one of us to have a side conversation. We'd be happy to entertain that. So moving on with the history of the property in question. So originally, 233 East Maple Avenue was home of Parkside Public School. So a school that many of you may have attended or your children might have attended. And later it transitioned to being a Markland Day School program. And then later was the Trinity Community Center that had daycare as well as senior care on site. So during its entire life, this property has been institutional use. And by institutional use, we mean it's something that's for the public good, whether it's been publicly or privately owned. Developers purchased the property or entered an agreement in August of 2022. Now, the developers reached out to the Board of Trustees with their plans, which was for high-density luxury apartment living. And so the board had discussions and renownedly said the village doesn't really want to have luxury apartments on this property. It's too dense because of its adjacent single-family home use, but also we know with Metro 19 going on, we need to see that go live first before we were to introduce even more units on the market. And so if we go to the next slide, we can kind of highlight the timeline. So after having that conversation, we engaged with the developer and clearly said, you know what, we'd rather take over the contract and purchase the property ourselves so that the village can really dictate what happens with the development instead of it being in the hands of private developers. If a private developer purchased it and it was a permitted use, the village would not be able to say no and reject the proposal. They'd be able to go on and build anything that they would like that's permitted per zoning law. The village acquired the property for $1.5 million that utilized TIF money, so it did not come from our general revenue. It's from a fund that's based for economic development activity from the East Irving Park TIF. Originally, we were discussing a housing development that was targeting senior affordable housing. And so we launched an RFQ, a request for qualifications from open developers on August 10th of 2023 of last year. On September 11th of 2023, we reviewed those plans from developers in a public setting where we got a lot of feedback from the community, especially adjacent property owners, and from the Board of Trustees. At January 15th of this year, the village and the library had a joint meeting to discuss the future of the property. When we originally acquired it, we reached out to the Park District and the Library District for their interest. And at the time, neither party was interested. The Park District still is not interested in the property. And having time pass, the library had reevaluated after going through their process that they wanted to have further conversations. Something that's important to note while this is all going on, we're utilizing that property for training. So we've actually done over 1,500 hours of training for our police, our fire, and other agencies that is providing great real-life experience before a crisis happens. It being a former school, and unfortunately today in this day and age with school shootings being a reality we have to deal with, this has provided invaluable training while we've been waiting to figure out how we want to redevelop this site. If we go to the next slide, what is this property? For those of you maybe not as familiar with it, it sits right now at the southeast corner of Maple Avenue and Howard Avenue, that green parcel right there. And the library is situated just next door to Village Hall here on Park Avenue. Something that's important to note is the library owns two parcels. The parcel that the library building is on itself, as well as the open surface lot that's adjacent to it. We currently have a intergovernmental agreement that allows people to park there after hours, but it is in the heart of downtown and it's a fantastic asset for our growing businesses. So in February of this year, the village and library signed a memorandum of understanding to just explore the feasibility of swapping properties, meaning we would switch our deed to the ownership of the library and the library would switch their deed of property to the Village of Roselle. And in August of this year, we entered into an official intergovernmental agreement if the library were to pass the referendum to transfer the properties. We go to the next slide. What is an IGA for a land swap agreement? So that agreement is predicated on the referendum passing. If the referendum does not pass, there's no transfer of land. So first, what would happen is if the referendum were to pass on November 5th of 2024, the village would begin demolition of the property within 60 days. After that, the village is responsible also for the demolition of the site and prep up to $450,000. Something that would have to happen regardless of whether the library were to build there or a developer. If this weren't to happen, the village is still planning to move forward with demolition of the property early next year. After that's done, the village would convey the property, transfer ownership to the library district so that way they own it and they could start doing their construction of the new library. Once that occurs, the library would transfer their ownership of the parking lot that's on Park Avenue to the village immediately. So that way the village can start to operate and provide that to adjacent businesses earlier. After the construction would be done of the new library, the library would then convey their building property to the Village of Roselle finishing the entire transaction. Currently, that intergovernmental agreement is set to expire April 30th, 2025 if a referendum is not successfully passed. We go to the next slide. Some key details about a land swap. So first and foremost, I know we just went through a lot of town hall meetings, and so we did home rule, and there's a lot of information out there. I'm sure a lot of people might feel like, well, this feels like this is a home rule power grab here. This type of a deal would be legal and able to be transacted even without home rule. So home rule has nothing to do with this situation at all, and we want to just take that off the table immediately. The other thing that's really important is while we're here together trying to educate residents on this multifaceted plan, we're two totally separate taxing bodies. The library board is separately elected from the village board. We have separate budgets. We have separate levies. So we do not intermingle our funds. We do not collaborate outside of our agreements. We have complete separate jurisdictions. And so the village is not able to, nor would be giving money for the construction or could give money for the construction of the library. If we go to the next slide, what we can do and what we did here with an intergovernmental agreement is we can enter into things to help with special events, funding and staffing of certain projects. And so this is where we can transition and share property like this because it's structured in a legal way. But we can't give money straight out of our budget to help facilitate or to subsidize either the park district, the library district, or even the school district from that sense. Our budgets are completely separate, hence why they're going for a referendum for the construction of it. With that being the case, I'm going to turn over to the library district to discuss their referendum and the building renderings.
Thank you, Mr. Pileski. My turn came up kind of quick. Can you go back, Emily? So if you're not familiar, this is what, I'm Katie Smith, by the way. I know Mayor Pileski did introductions, but I'm the library board president, and thank you for being here. I do invite you to our library board meetings that are the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, typically with 0 attendees. I would love to see this crowd there. So this is an unusual picture that we have of the entrance. Typically, the entrances we have of our current library are far out. So, you know, this is a close-up entrance, and I've never seen this image before. And it's very, I feel like it's almost like a puzzle, which our library right now is kind of a puzzle. We are at the point where, based on our infrastructure and our needs, we've overgrown and we can no longer use the current library to suit the needs of the residents. So as you're aware, or I'm sure you are aware, we went for referendum last year and we lost by 22 votes. So we have surveyed the community for the past couple of years. And then this past year, more so, you know, what happened? Why didn't we win? And for all the people that did vote yes, which there were a lot, you know, what is it that, you know, we can do differently? Emily? So we came up with a plan. We, like I said, we did some surveys and we did a lot of gatherings with the community. And overall, you know, we decided to go again. So we are going to be going for a $22 million referendum, and that will be on the November ballot. Our goal is to build a library for everybody in Roselle. Currently, we don't really have space for everybody. All age groups are going to have their own space. We're going to be able to increase programming and accommodate large groups, which we currently cannot. So here are some images of our aging infrastructure. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but as you can see, you know, we do have some issues. They're going to cost a lot of money. So, you know, we go through this back and forth. Are we going to spend the money to fix this? Or, you know, are we going to go for referendum and then get something that everybody in the community really needs? So the image here is not of our library, but of a local surrounding library. The drive-up window, this is something that we cannot provide to our residents and something that a lot of people have, you know, asked for. But based on our footprint, it's, you know, we're very landlocked and we cannot do that. So this is just an image of one of those, something that we can potentially provide. The other thing is adjacent parking. Currently, our parking lot is across the street, and it's one of our biggest complaints from patrons is that, you know, parking is very inconvenient, which we do understand. So that is something we're looking to resolve as well. Here are some images of the interior. The new building will have, like I said, dedicated spaces to all age groups. So that image up at the top is our youth, and then at the bottom, we have some middle schoolers, some tweens. So making sure that they have a place, that they can call their own, and they're not hushed in the adult section, but also, they're not super little in, the preschool section. This way, they all have their own place. STEM is very, very big right now. Schools are incorporating STEM maker spaces, 3D printers. It's not just for kids in school, it's also for adults. Sewing machines, there's plenty of, different equipment that we could get to offer programming to people of all ages. The meeting space there at the bottom is just an image to show you we have such a high demand in Roselle. I love Roselle. We have a lot of nonprofits and a lot of groups who have really great intentions. Unfortunately, they don't have a home. So they're often looking for a place to hold their meetings. And typically they come to the library, but unfortunately we struggle because we try to offer as much programming as we can with the little space that we have, while also accommodating all of the wonderful groups that we have in Roselle. So here, increasing programming. So an issue that we currently had, the programming space that we have is very small. So we're very limited. The programs we do offer are fantastic. Any survey that we do, the residents always say, we love the programs, but we do have to cut off registration. We can't really accommodate many people. It's small. So I think that's where a lot of the frustration lies with the residents is they want to participate, and we do offer these free classes. This is, we're a service to Roselle, and we want to be able to offer that, and it's sad when we have to turn people away. So there's an image of it's kind of like the pre-K area, the little kid area up at the top, and then at the bottom there, you can see some renderings of the adult section upstairs. So, our goal is to build it for everybody in the community. This isn't something that we want to just dedicate, towards little kids or, a certain age group. This is really important to us to make sure that everybody has their own place and it's used more as a community center versus just a library and a book depository. So here are just some bullet points that, we can go through. The advantages of this land swap, we are able to have an updated, a safer library. We can do adjacent parking. We can have a drive-up window, more space outside. Right now, we're very restricted because of, our footprint. And this way, we'll be able to have a lot of dedicated space outside, not only inside. So yeah. So the estimated cost for this is 22 million. We do have a nifty calculator on the website where you can put in, your tax amount, and then it'll give you the exact tax impact. The average is 179 a year for an average of a $300,000 home. Here's some renderings of the outside. This is the exterior. So you see Maple Avenue and Howard. So I don't know if you can go back, Emily, I'm sorry. So right now, that outdoor play area that you can see on the right-hand side, that is absolutely impossible where we're at right now. We're very, very limited. And then the parking being adjacent is going to be huge. Here's just some layouts of the first and second floor. We did have a basement on our first attempt. Like I said, we're very restricted and we could only go up, so we did a basement, a first floor and a second floor. But now since, if we do this land swap, we have so much more space to expand, and we don't have to have a basement. So the first and second floor, those are the plans for that. There's just some more renderings of the lobby. And this is the entrance to the youth section. preschool area. You have a middle school area for our tweens. A lot of bright colors. There's some programming space. Nice place for kids to get messy, something that we do not have right now. And then meeting spaces, like I said, you know, people here in Roselle have the best intentions, and, you know, I love all of our organizations and nonprofits, and I would love to be able to provide a meeting space for them, a free meeting space. Those are just some different configurations for you guys to see. And there's an image of the makerspace. And right now, I know there's, you know, kids in there, but I just want to reiterate, it's for everybody. It'll be for all ages. Some more floor plans, so you can just kind of get an idea of where the, you know, all the books are going to go, the stacks in the adult section and the youth, the amount of meeting spaces that we have, the study rooms, something that we currently lack and don't have any of. We have a little single-person room, and, you know, with people wanting to work remotely or go to school online or anything like that, unfortunately, we don't really have a place to accommodate them. So if, as you can see, the blue study rooms, that would be huge. And here's the second floor. We have some seating for adults and then a balcony. And then there's some images of the study rooms. And if you ever go to any other libraries and you try to reserve a study room, there's typically a long wait. You know, I tend to library hop. You know, I try to get out of the house instead of working from home. I try to work from the library, and I go to different libraries, and I almost always have to, you know, wait for study rooms because they're usually packed. And this is a teen room, something that's very, very popular. Our, you know, libraries are accommodating teens. If you're familiar with Facebook, you'll know that teens get a bad rap around here. They're on motorized scooters and ding-dong ditching, and they're at parks, and they're using bad language, but they don't really have a place to go. So a teen room would solve that problem. And here's some exterior renderings. And this is what you'll see on the ballot in November. And then here are some dates for you to please recognize if you can come to any more informational meetings, or please tell friends, neighbors, family who live in Roselle to please join. Yeah, it would be great to see more faces in Roselle. All right, so that's it for me. We can do our Q&A.
Oh, no. We're almost there. So I think the big thing here is if this were to happen, then what's the village going to do then with the existing library property? And so our Main Street area has continued to evolve, and a lot of this has been stuff that's been foreshadowed in our 2016 comprehensive plan. So one of the last things that Mayor Gail Smolinski did with the board then at that time was think about what is the village going to look like in 20, 30, 40 years. And that was a very rigorous process that took multiple years and involved many residents, probably included in this room, to get feedback and understand what we should be doing. And right here is one of those things from the plan. And I encourage everyone, it's a large plan, it's hundreds of pages, but take a look at it because I think it's really important because we've done a whole lot of work to achieve this. And a lot of these things have already been talked about and were vetted by the community almost 10 years ago. And so here you can see Village Hall and the Metro Station are the two red dots on the map. There's circles that show how long it takes to walk in that area, and the smaller circle is a 5-minute walking radius. And you can see from Village Hall, the site that's in question is just 5 minutes away from where we're at today. And 10 minutes away, you kind of can get from one end of from Linford Winery essentially all the way to the metro station. I think that's a really powerful message about how much growth and how much we're seeing Roselle kind of push out from the center. And that a part of this really is how do we continue to sustain that and put in strategic development to support that outward expansion. So if we go to the next slide, you can kind of see some of the things that were highlighted for this area specifically. And a lot of these things we've already accomplished. I think that's an incredible thing to know. These plans are meant to be 30, 50 years in the future, but in 10 years, we've accomplished so much as a community because the business community is investing in Roselle because they see the potential here. Residents are excited and spending their money here. Local businesses want to open up here because they know Roselle is going to support them. And so that kind of growth means we have to think big about how we want to address these issues. So things like the town actually said, you know what, we don't have a good gathering space. The area in front of Village Hall is kind of useless. We should do something different. And we're doing that today. It's been painfully slow. Trust me, I wish it was done already, but it's going to be finished this year. And so we've made a lot of progress there. But something that really struck me is the library was called out over 10 years ago as already having inadequate facilities, already having disrepair and issues that need to be addressed. Residents like you were already saying to the village, you know what, the entrance is in a not ideal location. It's kind of a difficult building to navigate and it wasn't really great. And so we already had thought about, well, what could we do differently here? If we could reorient our core town center, what would we do? And so relocating the library was an idea that was already floating around out there in 2016. So if we go to the next slide, what would we do? This would help us really continue the momentum we've had. So one of the big things we had was enhancements near the metro station. And so love it or hate it, Metro 19 is going to be going on live early next year, and that's going to bring hundreds of new residents to our town. People who are going to spend their money and want to stay in town. And they're going to have within walking distance so many amenities that's going to ignite a new era of economic development. We just signed a deal on Maple Avenue, which would be just a hop and a skip away from the new library if approved, for a barbecue place as well as 2 additional retail restaurant locations within that center. We've been able to get grant funding for pedestrian bike path to go over Irving Park Road. Now, this is something that's being majority funded by IDOT and will be going in place, we hope, by 2016, but it's the state of Illinois, so we throw that out there. But that's going to help make passage between one side of Roselle to the other side much easier. We're also pursuing grants for streetscaping and other pedestrian enhancements, so that way crosswalks that we see on Maple Avenue, for instance, crosswalks on Irving Park Road, as well as Rosa Road, are safer, so people can move around our town center a lot more safer and organically. And also creating more public gathering space has been a huge important thing. The Pedal Porch, Promenade, and Plaza projects are well underway, and we were able to secure a number of grants to help fund that. And so we've ignited a whole lot of activity, but we need to find other strategic areas to redevelop. And so if we go to the next slide, we know that there are goals that we have to pursue to continue the growth that we are seeing. And the library land swap deal would allow us to pursue those more aggressively. As we mentioned earlier, we already looked at doing moderate density housing on the lot, to which a lot of the neighbors said, that's not what we want here, that's not what we envision there. And so for us, if we had the library parcel, which is flanked by the municipal center, it's flanked by other businesses, we could easily do mixed use in this location that we could not do on Maple Avenue. Having first floor retail, expanding restaurant location options, shoppable retail experiences is something that we can absolutely do. Adding additional housing or even office space is something that's really critical for us helping move and allow businesses to grow in Roselle, as well as open up other spaces to attract prime tenants. We have a ton of interest every day in the Village of Roselle, and some of the hardest things is that there's just not space in the right spots, or we have really bad landlords. And so this would be a way for us to increase density in a strategic area where we already have it without minimizing the single family residents that we have around us. The other big thing is parking. I hear it all the time, and it's very wonky, right? If you go around during day, there's tons of open spots, but as soon as you want to go to 1913 or 8,000 miles, good luck finding a spot. And so by having this kind of land, it allows us to explore and open up more parking options for our downtown area that's growing. And that's a good problem to have, but we don't like to walk. I get it. So this would allow the village to then work to either increase the density of parking by making it more economically feasible for us to consider a garage down the road. But in the meantime, we could put a number of parking spots on the grid immediately by this deal, which just isn't possible today based on the available land in our core. anything that would go through a development process is 2 years away. And I think that's important to say. Even if the referendum passed in November, they have to go through a whole process. It has to go through planning and zoning like any other development would, and it has to be constructed, and that takes time. And so the village would engage with a thoughtful process with residents included to understand what is it that we want to see this site redevelop in, but also say, let's look at the entire town center planning area. A lot has changed, and if we've accomplished a lot of these goals that should have been done in 30, 50 years, we need to set a higher bar of expectation for what we want to see as a community. And so we'd go through a thoughtful community engagement process to identify what are those key things we want to attract and how do we strategically develop that area to be meaningful for generations to come. Anything would go through our planning and zoning commission and the village board for approval, which allows the public to have multiple points of contact to engage us and ask questions. And so I think while we don't have the answer of a Trader Joe's is going there or this business is going to relocate to that lot, no one knows. Because who thought 2 years ago what would have happened after COVID? Right? The world is unpredictable. And so we have to have good direction, good vision, but we have to be flexible to figure out what the market's going to react to at that time, what the funding availability is to make this happen. And so with that, I think we're opening up to questions now. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll run over with a microphone and we will address it as best as we can.
I have a question about the previous referendum that was defeated. How much was that referendum for?
$22 million. Yes.
And I think if I remember correctly, it's the same amount this time, but it's for more square footage. Is that correct? No? Similar square footage? Okay. But bigger property.
All right, I guess my question would be $22 million seems quite ambitious. So my current taxes for the library are about $258 a year. With this increase, I'd be paying $478 a year for the library when I pay, I don't know, $250, $300 to the Village of Roselle. So how am I going to extract anywhere near that type of any return on what I'm paying in taxes for an ambitious project that no one's going to get $500 a year use out of the library, except maybe a very select few. It seems counterintuitive to be paying more for a library district than to the village I live in, or the county, or various other services that I get. It just seems in today's climate, that's a lot of money for a property that doesn't generate any revenue, has a long-term payback. You're borrowing when interest rates are higher. You have 10 years of deferred maintenance. The question would be, should have fixed it 10 years ago. Why are we doing this now and why are we building something new? So that's a lot of comments, but I think there's a lot of questions out there and this is a lot of money for something that seems like you're shooting for the moon when you should be looking for singles and doubles instead of grand slams.
I'm not sure what your question was. I know you had a lot of things to say.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So public libraries, many things. I know that any village manages safety, police, fire, public works, but what a public library does is very different. If you just take a dollar amount, I could divide that by 25 to 50. And if you read it all, if you listen to audiobooks, if you ever need help researching or navigating the internet, trying to find information for yourself, for your business, the dollar amounts to me, I could run quite a few scenarios and it would be much higher than the kind of dollars you're talking about. We're two very distinct units of government. Our services are different.
And what I'll just say is everyone's gonna have very different opinions on this, and we totally respect that. We're just here to make sure everyone can make an informed decision and educate. And so respect your opinion totally. And I think we got as best an answers we're gonna get tonight. I think the whole idea is we want to make sure everyone's educated on the facts and they can make their own decision. And so for you, sir, that might be what your outcome is. For someone else, it might be different. And that's totally fine. All we're trying to do is make sure we have an opportunity and a forum for people to ask questions and we can answer them, and appreciate the question. Not saying that that was a bad question by any means, but we want to just engage in conversation and dialogue here so that way everyone can make the best decision that they need to do for their household. So
My first question is, how many new jobs is this library going to create? Because it's obviously going to create quite a few if you're going to have that many new sections in a library.
We don't intend to increase staff at all.
Who's going to staff the library then?
Same amount of staff. The design, the floor plans we showed you are laid out intentionally so that our staff on the desk can have sight lines. We'll have security cameras. We have 32 staff members now. I don't have enough desk spaces for them today. And they're on the floor, they're in the back, they're planning programs, they're running programs. They're doing many things, but we intentionally didn't design a massive building because we don't intend to ask you for an operating rate increase. We need to be able to operate this facility with the staff we have now.
Okay.
Is the plan the same building that it was last time?
No, sir,
Is it the same square footage?
just about.
That was the plan last time was a knockoff of the Indian Hills unit that was built. It was in Wheeling, Indian Hill Trails Park District. Library District. That library district is 3 times as large as our library district.
Okay.
So it seems to me that if we're building a facility that a district that's 3 times as big as us would use, that we're sort of going overkill. Just that's more of a comment. The only question is, what is the multiplier increase going to be? I've got a school district already asked me for 20% on mine. I got a park district that asked for more, is asking for more money. I got a home rule worried about my water bill. I don't know where, if this is believable, what the tax thing seems to indicate is you're asking me to raise my rate more than 50%.
Okay,
And that seems a lot in the given.
understood. So unlike the school district, we're not asking for a limiting rate increase. So we're not asking for a specific point blank, blank, blank number. It is going to be individual to every homeowner. And that's why we emphasize that calculator. So you can put in your value and exactly. Yeah. And to the point about, is it the Indian Trails Public Library District? We did not intentionally copy them. We designed a unique building to our needs. Today's building next door is 27,000 square feet. This new facility is about 32,000 square feet. It is not that much bigger. And it would be more suited to today's population, but not, we could even go bigger with the population Roselle is now and may grow to in the near future.
60,000 people.
Okay. Okay. 23. Yeah. Okay.
And just to be clear, on the water bill side, your CIS fee is a part of that. The board made a commitment and has passed a resolution that they would not increase that through the end of this decade. So that, while the water rate will increase because we buy it from the city of Chicago, I have no say over what the city of Chicago charges me to buy your water. The CIS rates are going to be locked in at least for a time period, just to clarify that. So we're going to make sure we get, I know you have another question, ma'am. There's a lot of hands up, so we want to make sure everyone has a chance.
Trying to get a better understanding of the true costs. You mentioned that the bond is 22 million, it's to build a facility, and you're telling us that you're not going to increase your staff whatsoever. And I'm having a hard time putting those two things together. With this huge new facility, all these things that you were showing us, all these programs, all these additional opportunities, I'm having a hard time understanding that you're not going to increase staff in order to accomplish that. And I'm just trying to lock that in some way. to see if that's in fact the case, because I suspect that once this facility is in place, there will be, in your mind, a need to staff it in some way. And those staffing opportunities, I guess, come with the obligation to provide long-term benefits for folks, pensions and the like for 30 years, which I think should be included in the cost of this project as well. So any thoughts on, additional thoughts and promises from you on the staffing of this project going forward?
Yeah, if we scroll back up, if we're able to scroll back to the floor plan, you can count the number of staff desks and it does not exceed the number of staff we have today. If we ever do increase, I would foresee it being changing some part-time jobs to full-time jobs, but not increasing the overall body count. Today, library staff, certainly. I don't think you're wrong. What I'm telling you is that we were dedicated on the outset to not have to add more staff to the building. We rely on security cameras today. We rely on sight lines today. I don't think I can make that promise. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, like I said, at the outset, we worked very closely with the board, with our architects to say, we know what our limitations are. We cannot run the library district responsibly if we have a huge building that we know we're going to need a lot of people in. So it's just a difference of 5,000 square feet, and it's reconfigured so that we can see around the library better from every staff point we have. We have one in the lobby area, one in the youth area, and they're double-sided, and then another one in the second floor.
Okay, I have several questions. Will there be room for expansion at this new location so we're not in the same meeting 20 years from now?
That's one of the benefits of this land swap is that because the acreage is so much larger, we could put the building in a way that does open up the potential to expand if needed. I don't know what's going to happen in 20, 30 years in Roselle, and we don't want to be landlocked again if that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't want to step on the library's toes. This would become their property and anything they want to do with it is their decision. I think what's interesting to me is you could essentially build the same building twice on this property and still have the parking lot and everything else. You see a lot of communities as they grow and there's needs change. You have, art centers or other things come up or needs that, are looking for land and whatnot. And so you're not going to have a community center tagged on to Village Hall. Work gets done here. That's not what we're built to handle or to do. This would allow other, synergies to build up over time. I think that, maybe the library doesn't need to expand, but maybe the community decides, I really want some other type of service in the community. You could have that built on as an addition to this building versus other uses in the community. You're kind of at maximum capacity, or it doesn't make sense to have that like built off to Klaus, because that's in a core residential area. Those streets couldn't handle that kind of traffic. So I think that's an exciting opportunity outside of the library's core mission. Again, I don't want to, that would be up for them to decide if they wanted to engage that. That's something that the community kind of unlocks with that.
You mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that this is being streamed. Where would the person go to watch that streaming?
So we have the link on our Facebook page. We can provide that afterwards as well. It'll also be available on the Village's YouTube channel. So that's available with all of our board meetings and any meeting that we conduct for people to watch at any point.
My final question, you said that if it doesn't pass, that the agreement between the two will expire in April. Why April, not sooner?
So that was for a couple of reasons. I think they would have two opportunities. There's two elections between now and then, but also we would be able to continue to go through our development process to understand one way or another, we have to do redevelopment. Either this site's going to get developed or the library site's going to get redeveloped. And so that would give us enough time from a village perspective to then shop around if we need to kind of line up, because we don't want to hold on to this property for a long time. So if the library referendums don't succeed, the village board needs to kind of have a decision to decide if the library's still interested, how do we weigh that against future economic development costs to the village. Like I had mentioned, we had the intentions of demolishing this property early next year, regardless of the outcome of the referendum. So we'd probably continue to recall in the affordable senior housing developers to reconsider. I think that was a 3 or 4 story building that we were looking at. I know there was some concerns about the height. We might also go shop around and say, hey, the market's changed in a year and a half, maybe we want to put out a request again and see who responds to that, so we can kind of evaluate our options there.
I fully support this proposal. I think it's a great idea to move the library to a new parcel because it saves the construction of a temporary library to rehab the old library. I think it's a fantastic thing. And I was wondering if you could tell me how much time gets shaved off the opening.
The speculation, we would imagine that if we're successful in November and we're doing design development and zoning and permitting and everything through 2025, that we're going, we're breaking ground or by 2026, and the architects say 18 months. So, add that there, and then somewhere in 2027 is the project, and that's the best guess I can give you at this point.
Referendum was on the ballot before. The amount 21 million to rehab the existing library kept coming up. But at no time have I seen what that scope of work entailed, what the costs were associated with rehabbing the existing building, and why are we not having that shared with us? I feel like you don't want to even try to work with what you have. And like people have said, my taxes are going up much, much quicker than any form of my income will ever go up. Everybody wants money. I hear Lake Park's going to go in another year. They want to do stuff, and that's going to impact all of us. We already have the Roselle Park District that passed. And the other thing is, when we had the meetings before, I asked the question, has this been value engineered? And once again, one of the things that showed up on these plans is we need a fireplace. I mean, seriously, people, these are things that are nice extras, but do we need it to function as a library?
Just for my memory, Susan, I'm going to work backwards. The fireplace is a nice addition. It's one of the ways we wanted to try to make it a space where folks of all ages, seniors, adults, could gather. And that's what we see in libraries today is those kind of nice spaces. And if we were doing a project, that is something that does get value engineered in the end. If we have to cut costs, those really nice things get put off for later or not done at all. I don't know about value engineering up front. My experience is value engineering for the end to cut costs. As far as the 21 million estimate we had in the last run, yeah, we asked our estimator, the same estimator who estimated this project and the prior project, these are all the things we want. You have our scope, and we asked them, what would it look like if we wanted to just gut the facility we have, tear everything out, put everything in, try to fit everything we possibly can, bump it out where we can, add however many few thousand square feet we can to the landlocked space that we have. And he came back with 21 million or more. So that's what we shared in the last referendum. And when we were doing our public input sessions, going back to June now, we shared that at the lower level, we're estimating that if we were to do a few things, but not many things, we still need an investment of $10 million in our facility today. We shared that then. We shared that via our survey, and we had that on our website. And we shared the report, which is available now on our website. If you wanted to review that, I could share that with you. Just like that, at least 20 million to do even more to our facility today. Our facility has infrastructure investment needs, and it needs space analysis and redesign, and it needs modernization from top to bottom, and it's expensive.
I kind of agree. It needs to be repaired, or the old library. I don't understand why all of a sudden we're getting this new library, 22 million, when the last referendum, what about when your house needs a new roof? You put a new roof on your house. When you need new air, new heating, you do that kind of thing. Why did our library get so, need so much repair? I'm totally not against this new referendum thing, but I'm not even sold on it. I mean, I just don't understand. Why didn't you do the repairs on the old library? But you had said it costs money. Everything you do costs money. Everything we put in our homes. It all costs money.
Certainly, and we have.
Going, to me, you're going the 22 million. That's a lot of money.
You're right, it is. We have about $1.7 million in our special reserve fund today, and we need that for a roof. We need that for HVAC. We need that for security systems. We need that for facade repair that we know will be very expensive. We have, if we're going to keep our facility today, at some point we will have to tear down the brick on the facade and rebuild it because it wasn't built properly originally. It's why we have. I don't know either. I understand your frustration. It's frustrating for us too. We, when I started here 8 years ago as director, the board said to me, we need to repair our roof. We need to replace our roof. We're estimating 400,000. That's what our calculator says. So I said, okay. And I got some second opinions, and the second opinion said, it's okay. You're gonna need to do some work soon. So what we were able to do, and we were able to do that with a lot of financial support actually from our foundation at the time, we did some repairs to the membrane roof. And we did some facade repairs, some tuck pointing, and we put a sealant on a part of our facade that is where we understood to be like one of the worst sources where we were having water infiltration. So we put a Band-Aid on. And we said, okay, what else? Because if we spend all our money on these infrastructure things, on these not very fun projects, but very necessary projects, that still doesn't leave very much for the space, for the programming, for modernizing the inside, for making it more comfortable, for making it more usable by the community. We have a lot of space for big stacks, and we have a lot of space for reference materials. We don't need that. We need more space for DVDs. We need more space for programming and study spaces. We have dead zones in the facility for, where you go into the room and you don't have any cell service. And today that's a detriment. You have to be able to connect to the internet today to do so many things. So bottom line is, I hear you, and we need a lot of money for a lot of different things. And we only have been able to save over these years so much based on what our limited levy that we get every year.
Okay, assuming this all comes to pass and the land swap goes through, what is the village plans for the old library? Are they gonna raise it, tear it down, or?
So, yeah, so we would not use the building. We've looked at it and had some initial economic development kind of specialists, I guess would be the right way to look at it, say if there's any feasibility to repurpose the building. There's none. The nice thing is it's in a TIF district, which means what happens is as property values increase because of the work we're doing, we recapture that from other taxing bodies and are able to reinvest it in the community. And so it doesn't hit our general fund. So we tear it down. What we would do in the meantime, though, is like we did with the Trinity Center, we've used that for invaluable public safety training while we wait for a plan to demolish it. So we don't want to just spend money to get rid of something and sit with an empty lot that doesn't help us. So the parking lot would be immediately open to all businesses in Main Street, and we'd advertise that and use that as relief. With the Maple Avenue parking lot going offline sometime next year for the construction of a new retail center, we know we're going to have parking constraints for cruise nights and things like that. So having that parking lot available within a short walking distance would be crucial for us. We'd allow our police and fire and other agencies to use it for training, again, because it's a weird building, and weird buildings are great to train in because it helps you learn for the unpredictable things. During the course, if it were to pass, to your point, we would then kick off a public engagement process, because we're not going to wait for them to be out to figure out what we're going to do. We're going to engage with the experts, figure out what works. We've already had some initial preliminary conversations with adjacent neighbors, just to see their interest in working with us and see if we can amplify this to get the biggest return on our investment from a village perspective on it. And so we would start that process as quickly as we could. So I know we're going through our budget process right now. We have put aside money, or we're earmarking money to do the study for the broader area that we think we're going to move forward with regardless, frankly. Just the focus of that changes on the mechanics of does this happen or not.
So more a comment than a question. Like everyone else in this room, I don't want to pay any more taxes than I already am. I get that. However, if the library doesn't go on that property on Maple, the village is going to sell it to a developer. It's too far away from downtown to build a parking facility there. So the people in this room are not going to have any control over what goes on that parcel if the library doesn't go there. Secondly, downtown desperately needs more parking here. A parking deck would be great, a couple level parking deck, but the only place to put it is on the library parking lot, which isn't gonna happen unless the library moves. So it seems to me that there's a bigger picture here than more so than just the $180 a year for a library. This is for the benefit of the whole downtown area, really, and the people who live around that Maple property. The other point that I guess I would make is that I've lived here a long time, and I remember back when they were trying to pass tax increase for Kemmerling Pool, and it was on the ballot several times and kept losing. Okay. And they finally pared it down, and it finally passed. Now what we have is a pool over there that nobody uses. Every family in Roselle takes their kids to Itasca or Bloomingdale or Schaumburg because the pool is nothing. It's a cheap pool, and that's what it is. And so instead of building a facility for the people of Roselle that they would use, what we got is something where everybody in Roselle goes someplace else. And I don't want to have that same thing happen with the library. So if we're going to have a library here, then let's have a decent library that people in Roselle will stay here and use as opposed to driving someplace else to go. I've been in the library many times, and you know what? It's not a very nice library. Sorry, but it's not. I've been to Schaumburg, I've been to Bloomingdale. Nice facilities. This is just not a very nice library, and that's why people aren't using it. Same reason they're not using the pool. So to me, it's a bigger waste of tax money to put the money into fixing a crappy library, just like building a small pool that nobody's using, than it would have been to just pay the money up front and build something decent in the first place. Thank you.
Hi, first a personal comment. I agree completely with what that gentleman said. Our home that we live in is probably our biggest investment that any of us have. And in order to really get your money for your investment, your village or the town that you live in also has to support that. This is one way of doing it, by building a bigger, better library, really similar to towns around us. We're not looking to build the Taj Mahal or anything here, but an adequate library. So that's my personal. But I am here representing Park Street Crossing, which is also somewhat closely located. Our concern is about that little parking space. If that was to be as you possibly left as it is, we'd be okay with that too. We would like to be involved in some of that discussion, though, if possible.
Absolutely. I think the one thing, having been born and raised in this town, our residents, and it's a good thing, want to hear their voices heard. That's why we're all here today. And that's what we always, as a board, know is we're never going to do something unilaterally. So that process would involve, like the comprehensive plan did, workshops, opportunity for feedback. So the whole community has a conversation in it. The need for a parking deck, there's a need for more parking spaces, is what I'll say. The reason I say spaces is because a parking deck is very expensive. So we want to exhaust every opportunity before we get to a deck. And a lot of times what you see is like with Metro 19, it's a public-private partnership there where there's some buy-in and there's some support there financially. And so I think what we would see is we would probably, and we see your unit or your building as a partner in that, because we'd love to see if we start to, there's a vacant piece of property that we could hypothetically purchase, right? We also have an alleyway that the village owns that we could potentially redevelop, right? If we work together, we could reconfigure perhaps your parking lot and conjoin it then with the library spot and have a better thing that works for everyone in a more holistic way. So we want to have those conversations. So to your point, absolutely, we would have that input throughout that whole process to make sure that we're doing something correct. So that it doesn't create we don't want to ruin one asset in the community to benefit another. Yeah.
This is a different topic. So, in addition, the gentleman. Well, okay, but I don't know yet. Okay, so I'm naive.
No, that's okay.
I know other places have it, and so I'd like to just see. I know it's Metro based.
Well, yes. So
I want to know what. That's a lot of
Absolutely. My dream is to have a rooftop restaurant on Main Street that you can enjoy outside and not have the deafening noise of a horn come by interrupting your conversation every 5 to 15 minutes during rush hour. So the good news so I know the merger that we went through, for those of you who aren't aware, there's a big freight merger that was going on and going through federal approval stages. As a part of that process, while that merger was approved, the federal government is requiring them to work with the village to implement a quiet zone, which means they are responsible for reasonable costs to do that. So figure out what reasonable means. But so we're working through that process right now. We had a kickoff meeting for our diagnostic, which includes Metra and all the other train agencies involved with it. A big piece of that is Metra has a lot of requirements. They want certain equipment to be installed that it's not only very expensive, but has a 36-month lead time. So the other thing that we're working through is a lot of adjacent property owners are going to be impacted. So entrances to and from businesses may be restricted to only right turn. And so we're working with all these different stakeholders to make sure it can happen. So I think we're closer than ever to getting it done, yet I don't have a deadline of when I think it could happen. The other thing that's important to note is while a lot of communities have quiet zones, that was under previous rules. Roselle is the first community to go through new rules after a change at the federal level that carved out the Chicagoland area from the typical process. No one has ever gone through this process before. We are the guinea pigs, and frankly, no agency, which is a shame to say, in Springfield or in Washington, D.C., knows how to answer our questions. And so the merger, if anything else, while I'm not excited to have that additional traffic through town, it's forcing people to actually talk to us and give us answers. And so, you know, it's a priority for the board. I just wish I could give you a deadline, but we are making progress. We're moving forward, and that's something that we're going to keep the community updated on. Not yet at this time. I think we will have a meeting to talk about it more with the community when we have more information to kind of talk through kind of the impact and whatnot. So the best thing to do is kind of hang tight, which I know is not a satisfactory kind of answer. Doesn't make you feel better, but we're working on that and we're hopeful. Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately with this one, we've been working on this since 2019. So a lot of times we go years without updates because we don't have updates, and it's not for lack of trying. We just don't get answers. So, but we're working towards it.
Get it way down here as opposed to way up here. Because you have to have a microphone way up here. Thanks. Jan, you'll hear me. That's for sure. That's for sure, babe. Okay. And I really appreciate what the gentleman had just said, because that was one of the things that I was going to say is first of all, I'm wild about this new plan. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think it's terrific to have this library with this design and the new spot. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. And like all public things like park districts, and libraries, it doesn't always come down to dollars and cents in terms of what you can etch out as, is it worth it or not? And I'll give you an example. I'm taking a program at Roosevelt University and was able to call the reference librarian at the library at 20:09 last night with a question about something in the database. And her help was just absolutely wonderful, just invaluable. It was. And how much is that worth in dollars and cents? I don't know, because I don't calculate. Because yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. Because I am okay with 22 million. And I also understand the issue with deferred maintenance as being when you have deferred maintenance and then you have to put so much money into trying to still put Band-Aids on something that isn't as workable. And since I am a member of a number of organizations here in town, the notion of having some meeting space just is wonderful. How much is that worth in dollars and cents? Hard to calculate.
I have a real quick, simple question. How firm is that 22 million? How was that number established? Did we get contractors? Did we get all the different contractors, electrical, heating, air conditioning? Did we get somebody to actually put together that number? Because if we have overruns, if it's going to be 30 million, it's definitely not going to be good.
So in terms of right now, we are, if the bond passes in November, we will only have a grant of authority to issue 22 million in bonds, no more. So that's that, on that score, it's settled. Our estimator is one of the owners of Shales McNutt, a very prominent construction company. He's an engineer, and he has a team of people who worked with him on our estimation. And he gave us a range, and the board was also very considerate that we got close last time with 22 and didn't want to ask the village for more.
Thank you, ladies, for the information. If the referendum does not pass in November, you have the money to make the repairs. What's the money to make the repairs? And is there a possibility that if they can't be made and there's not money for them to be made, possibility the library has to close?
I don't think it's that dire. We don't have the amount today to do everything. We're going to have to continue deferring. We're going to have to make choices and update our plans and possibly try again and see if we can, it depends on how things happen in November. And if we need to do significant renovations, like we do anticipate some need with our facility to modernize it and to make it a space that meets the community's needs today. And we don't have the reserve for that either.
I think what we're talking about in doing this and improving the library will make Roselle a more attractive community to other, younger people that are coming in town. A lot of the seniors, let's face it, our kids are grown. We may need the library to a certain extent, but the younger families, which is what I think Roselle should consider attracting to our community, will benefit from a updated library. We're talking about quality of life issue for people in this town. And what Barb was referring to with the train noise, that's an impact. It's an impact to our businesses. You want to attract more businesses, you want to attract more people. This would be a topic that you need to integrate with the quality of life that you're trying to build in this town. I participate in the car show every week. It's a beautiful car show. It's well attended, but it's awful when that train goes by. The train traffic, it has increased in the last year, and it's going to get worse. So you didn't talk at all about the what was it, 1.9 or 2.9 million that the state is giving to for that walk-through?
Yeah, for the pedestrian bridge.
Pedestrian bridge. What is that? Where is that going to be?
So that bridge would terminate at the metro station on the south side of the track. So currently today, if you were to enter the parking lot off of Maple Avenue, it would essentially terminate near there, kind of somewhat near the steps that you would take to get up to the platform today. It also then travel over then the street behind McDonald's. There's right of way that we and Metro and the state own that we can use. So there's no property acquisition. So along the tracks parallel behind McDonald's, the HVAC store, the car shop, and then the Legion to terminate on Main Street, somewhere between the houses there and Pollyanna. So, and that would be a multimodal path that would allow for both pedestrians and bicyclists to use that from one end to the other end. We have some rough renderings they're going through. We did phase 1 engineering. We're in the process of doing phase 2 engineering, maybe more or less. So it's subject to IDOT approval. So we have some renderings that I think we have posted before, and we can continue to post those. As a part of something you guys, I guess, get a preview, Metro is going to be painting the viaduct. So the branding on it's going to go away. That's no longer allowed by Metro policy. We would have a lit Roselle sign on it, though, that kind of make sure that we kind of still have that naming recognition on the street. So, but it'd be kind of similar to the pedestrian bridge that you see over Rosa Road today. It just would have our name on it, essentially.
I'm concerned about the comment that you made that $22 million is your figure and after that, the spending's done. Is that pretty much basically what I heard?
No, ma'am, we just won't be able to go higher than that. As far as issuing bonds. Anything else we would have to make up within our reserve.
Okay, and I understand that part because coming out of our taxes that we're given the money to build this thing. My question is, 22 million in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? I don't think it's going to stop at 22 million. I think there's going to be cost overruns and schedule delays. And when it doesn't get completed with the 22 million, then what are we going to do?
There's always something with construction projects. There's always something. But within our budget, we have an inflation point of 4% because we know that construction costs go up annually. So we have factored for that. That's why we emphasize going to the calculator. The 300,000 point is just a benchmark. There are houses below that, there are houses above that, and we understand that. That's true. Understood. We understand. This is a big question and this is your choice to make.
And that's why I think the big thing about tonight is we are finding an opportunity for everyone to ask questions and to get the information they need. And I think to your point, that's a fundamental issue of government, period. In Illinois, we are overly reliant on property taxes. That's our system. That's how we fund for all of our local units of government. And I think that is a systematic issue that's not unique to our community. It is across the entire state. And I think the only thing that, is different is the village has different opportunities to raise revenue outside of property taxes versus park districts, school districts, library districts. That's their only means of revenue. And so I don't disagree that, as a homeowner, do I enjoy what's happening with our property tax bill? Absolutely not. But I think we have a bigger conversation that's bigger than Roselle that we need to be talking about across the state because property taxes is a means to get to an end, but is that the right means, right? And I think that's a problem that, I encourage us, and I know we've got people running for other office in here that are going maybe to Springfield. And so I think that those are things that we need to continue to push on other people as well. It's not just here today. We have to be vocal to our state legislators and our federal legislators because there's money that we are sending to other units of government and it's not coming back to our community. And we've been doing a really good job of trying to get back some of that money that we've all paid to our community, but there's still that imbalance, right? And so we can try to fight that as much as we want to. And I think, those are the realities of today, unfortunately. And that's a bigger conversation that we're going to solve right now. But I think property taxes are a certain issue. And we'll go to the next question.
Thank you. That's a great point. Yes. So as a library district, the longest we can go is 20 years. That's what we're asking for is a bond over 20 years. Our payback over 20 years. Within, if you use that calculator, within that figure, the additional interest and fees to do the bond deal and everything are factored into that. So it would be that amount annually to pay off the lifetime of the bonds. Part of the payback, yes, but the project budget is 22, or the project fund, yeah. That's a good question. I don't have that figure in my memory. Certainly. Right. Yeah, so when we issue the bonds, we will collect we'll collect that $22 million. And we'll put that in a fund and we'll be able to get some interest, not more than we're actually paying on the interest. Of course, we won't be able to reap arbitrage benefits. But we'll have 22 million and a little bit of change with if some interest grows, and that will be our project budget. And if our building goes astronomically high, then the library board will have to make some serious decisions to the building. We won't come back and say, oops, we're building an 80 million, you know, we won't do that. We will have to work within our means. Okay. And no, and we won't be doing that.
And just a note from your friendly community moderator over here. If anybody has a question, if you could please speak into the mic because we are live streaming this. So anybody at home that might be listening in, if you've got a question and it's not in the mic, they're not going to hear it, which means your neighbors aren't going to hear all of your perspectives to help, you know, make an informed decision. So thank you all for your patience as I'm trying to go around to everybody. Just wanted to reiterate that the mic is really, really important for our live stream viewers and anybody who watches this later.
I got a question. If the library is built on that site, and you talked about possible expansion, what will we expand to, like Miracle Field?
No, Miracle Field is on Roselle Park District property. The parcel in question is on the the other side of that boundary.
Google, Miracle Field is permanently closed. Why is that?
So that's a Roselle Park District question. From what I understand, ADA requirements and whatnot have changed over time. And so there's updates that need to be made to that field. And so, but it's not being torn away, demolished, or nothing is being impacted with that. The Scout Lodge, the skate park, or anything in Parkside Park for that matter. Essentially, the kind of line of the parking lot today is a good visual for it, for kind of what's included for the land swap deal. So.
A couple questions. When they moved to the new location, you said they're going to tear the building down. Is that correct?
So yeah, per our IGA, if the referendum passes, the village is obligated to have demolition start within 60 days.
Now, how's that going to be paid for?
So we've already budgeted, so we own the property. If it's going to be redeveloped, we're demolishing the building. So whether this passes or not, Parkside School will be demolished early next year.
That's not going to be another government building, is it?
We have no need for additional government buildings. It would probably be, what we've seen is there's really not an ability to do retail or anything that would generate sales tax revenue on that parcel. So it'd probably be housing. The way costs are today to build single family homes, even townhomes, you just don't have enough space there to do it at a profit point that the market's interested in. So it'd be some type of denser building type. So somewhere around like 3 to 4 stories. You could group it in different ways to minimize the impact, but that's at least at this point with the way construction costs are, labor costs are for housing to turn a profit. That's what we've seen when we originally went out to request for proposals or for qualifications rather. But we needed to check the market again. So.
And my last question is this: Bloomingdale's sent out a card to everybody about mandate from Pritzker about a full year for kindergarten. Now, does the Roselle School District have enough space to do that? Or?
Hi, I'm in District 13. My children go to Erickson and Westfield. So District 13 is going for a referendum. That is in November, but that's for people who are in the District 13 area, which is a small area in Roselle.
I was saying that their school already is built. If they needed the school, why would you tear it down? Build a
Right.
school.
So the mandate is for full day kindergarten. District 12 already has full-day kindergarten. They can accommodate those kids, where at Erickson, they unfortunately don't have the space. So the reason they're going for a referendum is to, get the funds to build more space to have full-day kindergarten.
And I think one thing to note with schools, we have 5 different school districts that service parts of town. So to Katie's point, that impacts a part of town. It doesn't impact all of it. This property is actually in school district 12. So whatever their needs are, it wouldn't be inappropriate. They can't build a building outside a district for their needs from that side. And as Katie had mentioned, school district 12 already offers that. So there's no need on their part to kind of build additional I don't know, classroom space. We'll go with that. So I know we had scheduled this to kind of wrap up at 8 o'clock. I know it's 8:18. So is there anyone that hasn't had an opportunity to ask a question yet that wanted to ask one real quick on the record? We'll stick around afterwards. I think this is important dialogue, and so we'll stick around and have additional questions. But I do want to be respectful of those that, may have other things they need to do tonight. So, sir.
All right, David, why are we in the village in the business of real estate? We're buying all these buildings. We've got the property on North Roselle Road and bought when they were going to have the Olympics in Chicago, and it's still sitting there. What are we going to do? I mean, keep on buying properties and they're just sitting there.
So that property you're currently talking about is under a redevelopment agreement with Lexington Homes to put townhomes on that property. And so one thing we've been really good about is making sure we move on those properties. Part of it was we didn't have all the property to make that feasible for construction. We were able to close on the property that was needed for redevelopment there late last year. The Italian Pizza Kitchen redevelopment wouldn't have happened without the village acquiring that property and able to incentivize redevelopment. And so the village has a long-standing history that goes back decades of acquiring property in order to spur economic development and to increase the vitality of our community. We also acquire property to do flood relief. So we actively work with the county to acquire property that's in floodplains to convert that to stormwater detention to prevent damage to property and other things like that. And so look at Bloomingdale. They just acquired Stratford Square Mall as well as the Indian Lakes Golf Course. Granted, very different community, but similar size to us. And so a lot of communities, we're not unique in this. Elk Grove Village does this all the time to expand their industrial base. It's a means to, if you own the property, you can actually control its destiny versus having someone come to you with a legal right to redevelop that property into something that the village or the community might not find attractive. And so I think the village has done that to the benefit of our community and growing our tax base. Sometimes those are longer deals than they should take. So I will fully acknowledge our forefathers, when they bought that property, they should have had an out strategy sooner than what it took us to do. But if we didn't own that property, we wouldn't have been able to develop it. And so I think that's an important thing where I've been proud of our board and thinking about what's our out strategy so that we were not holding onto properties for decades, like you mentioned.
How does the village own the gas station across from Turner Pond?
We do not. That's currently distressed property that is in kind of tax limbo, I guess is the best way to put it. Cook County has a program to allow municipalities to acquire those properties at pennies on the dollar. And so we've been working to figure out a way that we could actually do that because that owner, no one wants to buy it because of the condition it's in and the situation there. So that's another site that we're going through, means that Cook County actually gives us a way to leverage our dollars much more conservatively than we do in other cases.
I got a question for the library people, or actually a couple. On the ballot, come November, I mean, you're asking everybody here to tighten your belts because we're going to wind up paying for this library if it goes through. So the couple that rents an apartment isn't going to have to pay the price we are. So why not put that on the ballot and saying that property owners are going to wind up funding this? Yeah, right. Because
I can't measure the impact on individual rents the way we can do an estimate with our financial advisor on the homeowner. But I would imagine that, yeah, like someone in the audience was mentioning, those increases
if
do get
people are
passed.
aware that they're going to be paying for this, they wouldn't vote for it perhaps. There's a possibility. I mean, what I'm saying is you got, I don't know what the situation is, but how many people come to the library that have family and that own property, or how many people go to the library that are just apartment dwellers?
It's a good question. I don't know.
And how do we let the library go in disarray? I mean, if you were aware from 2016 that the library was going to need work, how did it get to the point where it's at now? Why not fix it up? I mean, I go to the library once a week. I've never been in there where there's a crowd of people there, nor have I seen all the conference rooms always full. So
I'm sorry to hear that, but we do get busy at times. We have slow times. We had over 95,000 people visit the library last year, and that was individuals that, I wish I could break down how many of our card holders and users are property owners versus renters, but, you know, I would imagine the impact still is felt if you're renting.
Just had one question, one follow-up. Trying to understand if there's a misconception about the use of the property if this doesn't go through. I hear comments that it's either going to be the library or it's going to be high-density housing. And really, there's no obligation to the village to put high-density housing on that property if this doesn't go through. That might be the most economically advantageous solution, but there's no obligation to put high-density housing on that property if this fails, right?
So, and high density is not 3 or 4 stories that we're talking about. That's like what we see around here. We're talking about like mid-rise. So I just want to be very clear there. Our comprehensive plan also, from like a planning perspective, we can't put high density there because that would, with its proximity to single family homes, that would be a detriment to those property values. But you know, we're always gonna do the highest and best use. And so depending on the market, what could be a highest best use 2 years ago versus in 2 years down the road now, it could vary. But so we're gonna go out, we're not a developer. So we own the property. We're gonna rely on the private development community to tell us what can they turn a profit on and what does the market need at that time.
On the other hand, though, you own the property and can do whatever you want with it. You could tear the building down and make it a park if you want.
So we could, but is that the best use of the $1.5 million we spent to acquire the property? So we didn't buy that property to have it be vacant space that's not utilized by the community. We did it to help drive economic activity in the community. So I think we're not in the, there's a lot of mixed opinions on it, but it's going to get redeveloped at some point in time, whether it takes 2 years, 10 years, or 30 years, like some of the properties we own, it's going to be redeveloped at some point. We already have a park right next door to it that is being utilized, so we don't need to have additional park space now.
I'm going to turn the volume down. Windows. I've been, it was funny. I've been following along in the Daily Herald, and I know the original blueprint was for lots of natural light. Then it sounded like some members of the community were saying they want less windows and less natural light. I was in Lake Geneva 2 months ago and saw their library, the Frank Lloyd Wright designed library with all the windows and natural light. I said, I would love to see something, we can't have Geneva Lake, but I would love to see something like that in Roselle. So just curious, what's in terms of the design of the hopefully newly built library, what would it look like? That was my first question.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very happy. We might be ending on your comment. I'm not sure, but very sweet. Thank you. So the initial design, when we went the first time, you know, we had sat with the architects. They didn't come in and just say, here's an idea. This is what, you know, you should do. The board sat down and we said to the architects, the complaints we get about the library is dark and dreary and it's sad and the parking stinks and we don't have a drive-up window and, you know, there's not space for everybody. So there were a lot of things that people were telling us and we said, I think we want to make it a very bright and inviting space where it doesn't seem like it's almost like a prison. There really aren't many windows at all in the library where we are now. So the glass, the initial design, it stemmed from that conversation that we had with the architects. We wanted it to be a piece of art. We wanted it to be unique. We wanted it to stand out. So now the biggest, I'd say, complaint that we got the first time was the glass. Way too much glass, way too much glass. How are you going to heat it? How are you going to cool it? How are you going to keep it clean? Safety concerns. The glass, I am telling you, it was not the tax increase. It was the glass that I heard the most. And I would know I did so many presentations and I did so many different, you know, surveys. And it was honestly the glass that everybody had a very big problem with. So when we went back to the architects, we said, all right, we lost by 22. You know, we're trying to decide what we should do. Can you maybe give us some type of different idea? And, you know, I know it's probably not what you want. You want windows. I'm sorry, but I mean, it's still a very beautiful design. But we did have to say we have to minimize the amount of glass.
You gotta get your vitamin D in, right?
I loved the first design, but I also do really like this one.
No, just my one final comment, just to turn the volume down just a little bit and such. Cost benefit. You look at communities, Wheaton, Northbrook. I'm a retired school teacher from Buffalo Grove. You look at communities that are desirable, that people want to move to. And what are the things that these communities offer? They have outstanding schools. That's number one. Number two, they have a wonderful park district that offers lots of opportunities, activities for their residents. And number three, one of the things they all emphasize is a strong library. And I 100% get, I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income. But on the other hand, when you're thinking long-term in terms of your property value as it goes up, when people are looking at potential communities to move into, these are the three things their younger families are looking for. And that's something that we think we all need to weigh in the back of our minds, you know, whether we are retired or we have a young family and so on, is that we want people to continue to gravitate towards Roselle. I've been here 30 plus years, and we've made a lot of tremendous strides in the time that I've been here since 1992. And I think, and again, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but on the other hand, that being said, we want to be smart, we want to be prudent and think, you know, what is it, how can we continue to attract people to want to come to this community, to continue to develop this community and go forth as, you know, we go well into the 21st century. I'm off my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to do one last check. It is 8:29. Is there anyone that hasn't had an opportunity to ask a question? And I want to stress question. I appreciate, and I think what's great about Roselle is we're all passionate people. So whatever you believe, I appreciate the dialogue that we've had here tonight. But we want to make sure our main goal here is to educate and inform people. So if you have questions that we haven't had a chance to address and you haven't had a chance to ask a question, I just want to make sure that we do that last call.
With the outdoor space, around by like the ball field there and then also in the parking lot, I know in Schaumburg they have farmers markets and different kind of like walkable areas that I really enjoy. I work in Schaumburg, so I get to kind of see it day to day. But I would love to see something like that on a weekend. Something with Roselle that it is kind of lacking is like that walkable areas where you can walk to places and not rely on the car. Is that something like like activities outdoor, like in the parking lot or farmers markets or things like that? Is that a consideration? And what are other possible uses for like the lot and the outdoor space?
Certainly, that's the kind of thing we want to be able to do. You know, I'm assuming that Maple Field will always be there, and that's a nice hard surface. That could be a weekend market, that could be a craft fair, that could be, you know, we could host Green Roselle's Green Maker Market, something like that. With the attached parking, you know, that can be a lot of things. That could be the site of our, or the green space nearby. We can have youth concerts, acoustic concerts, something that, you know, fits the neighborhood nearby. We can have any number of outdoor programs that we can't do, outdoor movie showings. I'm trying to think on my feet. But yeah, the possibilities are so great. And feedback like that helps us think further in the future. Thank you.
Well, it is 8:31, so we have gone over a significant amount of time. Thank you for joining us tonight. Again, if you have neighbors or friends who aren't able to make it, please share this video so that way they can become informed. I know a number of people will be behind, so if you have questions or comments or you want to engage in additional conversation, please come see us. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time tonight. It really shows why Roselle is such a great place to be. Thank you so much.